What's that music? Ah, hello everyone. Why is there music playing?
I hear the video playing again in the past.
It's
that's
me.
right. Wow, that's funny.
Sorry.
Well, good to see you, Campbell. How have you been?
Hello everyone. Yashin, oh my God. Thank you so much for all of your amazing donations. That is amazing. Thank you.
Wow, man. That's crazy. The show
Yes.
hasn't even started.
Welcome everyone.
These great super chats.
I know, right?
Dude.
Now I'm under pressure to do a really good show. So there you go, guys. You better share this around. It's going to be a good one.
I feel like you got a good team here.
And of
you got BurnEye. You got Luke. Well, we got Sleeping Historia. Ancient Historia has become Sleeping Historia. It's the other half of the dolphin brain that stays awake while the other half is trying to get rest there. And then you got Gun Wu with us, which I love you, Gun Wu. Yeah. I'm so glad you're back. We just did Sync Tank, and you've got all kinds of information. You just brought adrenochrome research with you. We haven't even started the show. You started sending me some deep details in the private chat there on the chemical book. I think you can say adrenochrome, right?
Thank you.
It's a Coca-Cola, right?
Last stream of the Sync Tank was a Paranoid American was asking about how to never found a working link to buy adrenochrome, and a buddy of mine's girlfriend actually found it.
Well, just in case anybody was looking, we just want to have all the. It's like I like to check all the drawers in case I'm asked where anything is. It's very useful. I appreciate that, Go.
Not a problem.
It is. So, we're going to have a fun-filled night with just random comments from Sleeping Historia. So at any time you may see the head pop up, a bit of mumbling come out of it.
And for some real ESP testing, can we get a Sleeping Prophets
holy guacamole, Yashin. All right, who has to start taking off clothes? This is crazy.
Take some gas money, man.
I love you.
This episode.
Can I also have some money?
Yes, let's dedicate this episode to Yashin. And I hope I'm saying that in the right way.
I assume it looks like it's
that would be the worst.
Is it Joshin? Yashin.
So much.
Well, someone's donated over $200 before the show has even started or gotten into the topic.
So much money?
Must be pumped.
And thank you for paying
so
for the services and making this happen.
And if you'd like to help us purchase an island, that's something we can
do. Particularly islands with geothermal energy that we can put a pyramid on would be nice, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Or one with a pyramid already on it.
That'd be a good start.
So
we're supposed to talk about Geoglyphology.
So pyramids actually do have some very fascinating and high-tech properties and technologies built into them. For instance, the Bosnian pyramids, which originally were just called mountains covered by trees, some of them landslided on, and still not officially recognized by modern academia. But yet in the Farham Foundation, Arthur Farham, me and Campbell in our Autodidactic series, we've done a few episodes on his work. But for those who are new to this, geoglyphs and geoglyphology, one of the properties that you can use and put into this mathematical equations of the degrees from the equator towards cardinal north and south, as well as the length of the actual sides of the pyramid's corners to the peaks to the bottom. When you plot those degrees and the lengths into the system, it gives you exact coordinates to ancient other pyramid complexes and old societies like Luxor, Egypt, right in the heart of the pyramids, Tunis, and Tunisia, which was at one point a Roman capital, a barbarian capital.
You have woken me. I just found a pyramid on the back of an old picture of the
another additional piece
Carthage
of
aqueduct.
Oh, sorry.
Luke is like a dragon right there. He's like, "You've awoken me."
No.
Yeah, sorry. I was just continuing. There's an aqueduct of Carthage in this book, right? And it's got a pyramid in the background, and that's in Tunisia. So what you just said lines up quite literally.
So another piece of information.
He is a sleeping prophet right there. That right, like
he is.
Just
let's call him
sleeping Luke
Casey,
dropping bombs out of the ether.
Mm-hmm.
So Bosnia is in the central area of the Pannonian region.
I'm glad he's dropping them out of the ether and not out somewhere else.
Sorry, what did you say, Gunwoo?
Oh yeah, so yeah, another piece of information to relay this, the whole Bosnian pyramid. The Bosnian country, this location is right smack dab in the middle of the Pannonian region, which is the origin point of the Yamnaya culture, i.e. the Scythians. Which is the Scythian people
is essentially Tartarian.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This Bosnia is right in the heart of the Pannonian region.
Yeah, and part of
and that's
the former Yugoslavia that they
drawn to mark out.
Can you pop this image up on the screen?
A lot of the time, don't they?
Sorry, quickly, I'll just before I switch over, Xirtus, I just so that was the 3 side lengths plotted out to those, and then when you add the 4 corners of the pyramid and how they're facing in regards to the cardinal points, it gives you another 4 precise locations of one being the southern border of Russia with like Turkey or the Persian Empire and Iran there, and the Middle East, and that's still the border today, and that the other side is the Bay of Nazarenes there in, I believe, Portugal, and Gotland Island right in the Baltic Sea and tip of British Isles, tip of Northern Ireland's there. And Xirtus, you can bring up.
Oh, I was just gonna share.
You've got control to bring it up, brother.
Let me see if I can find the link I had a second ago. It's not important really, but just talking about the Croatians and the Bosnian pyramids, the women tattoos. I know Ryan Stone was talking recently. A lot of people go, "Oh, my wife has tattoos" or something like that, and this has cultural implications. But originally, it was very common to tattoo yourself to ward off Turks. This was a Catholic tradition that became very common, and it's interesting if you look into the Bosnian.
Looking at
Croatian
the geometry.
Look at the geometry, and you'd be like, okay.
No, it looks like the same
code to the sick count, like the mapping system, essentially.
It's somewhat reminiscent of those death masks as well. Those weird
this looks exactly the same drum patterns.
Right, and you can find women that still have this. This is not as uncommon as you think, and modern women are doing this more historically as a way to remember.
Right,
she's full gangster,
Babushka and the shaman.
Right, so it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting aspect to the culture I was bringing up, but also if you look at the Bosnian pyramids, like someone has gone and recently started to excavate and find all these paths, and so many people have been naysayers to it and saying this shouldn't be a cultural heritage site, and that's a great thing because the UNESCO goes in and they completely change everything, and they have an idea about what historical things are supposed to look like.
Exactly. Very true, Andreas. The fact that the government rejected it has allowed Sam Manovich, I believe his name is, the director and our head, and it's Dr. Sam. He actually got his doctorate in archaeology and like in pyramids like of Egypt and Mexico, and then like discovered the ones in back hometown of Bosnia there, Herzegovina. And then, like, over the years, first they took some of the top layers off and got those layers of geopolymer slabs, building up the step pyramid layered sides of it. Then they started excavating further, finding the entrances to the different tunnels and chambers within it. And then they used that LiDAR on the pyramids at one point there, which was pretty groundbreaking. I believe Klaus Donna was the one that had brought that in. When they first connected, and then they found that there's both moving spring like creeks and flows of current water at certain layers of it, isolated pools of crystal clear chambers of spring water that have been sealed for like tens of thousands or 10,000 years, apparently, that they dated, that all of the tunnels were filled with just this fine, straight pebble material, blocking it all in, that you could see that they filled it in with gravel, as opposed to the walls, the floors, the roofs, and everything else in the water chambers and the current creek and water flow that still goes through it. That they covered it up at the same time period that Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which is actually extremely close to Bosnia-Herzegovina here. And the site was also covered up and buried with their pyramids, and that anyone can go on to Netflix and definitely recommend that. Graham Hancock's new series and the full episode on Göbekli Tepe and the tepes in Turkey there.
What were you, Gomwu? You pulled up this article on the Shemitic Shin and S. What was the reason for that?
Sorry, what? I didn't.
Did you? I thought. Did you not? I saw this private. It said you sent wiki to the letter S, and then it says Ami.
Oh no! It's like I linked it to Sammy Drum, but I guess the link cut off.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't supposed to be the S. It was the Sammy Drum. I was talking about how the patterns of the Croatian tattoos
look interesting,
are almost identical to these.
Wow. So what are the Shami drums?
So are those tattoos? Are they like
Slavic? What do you say? Sorry, Cambell?
Are they used as wards, like the tattoos? Are they sort of like wards, basically? Like
I don't know too much about it.
So there's a couple things. Like, according to the Muslims have the same rules as the Christians and the Jews, that you're not supposed to get tattoos or cut your flesh or drink blood, according to Leviticus, right? But you can be forgiven for all of those things. So if you're Catholic. So the Catholics are allowing tattoos, but it's a thing that would be not acceptable to. You couldn't marry a girl who's got tattoos if you're a Muslim in the 16th century, 19th century. Yeah. So it's supposed to make them undesirable. But they're also they're supposed to be these sacred patterns that will protect them, that are geometric patterns. So there's this Islamic influence on the kind of patterns
they found. They found the Iceman, I think. The one in Russia that was like 12,000 years old or something, and he had tattoos on him, and they were saying that they thought they might have been like for healing because they were in certain parts.
I think there's been a few of them, Campbell. Like also,
remember they found the dude with Adidas on? They actually found a guy from thousands of this is how long people have been wearing Adidas. Yeah.
No, but I think Campbell's talking about the OdySee Iceman.
Yeah, proper shoes. Wow. Clearly Adidas, right.
Yeah, he was a bit autistic. I can't quite say it, but
it's Wim Hof.
Ones in bogs that also had the exact same, and they all seem to be alchemical symbols too. That are these tattooed symbols.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they were used for healing. But that's definitely Wim Hof, without a doubt.
Well, I mean, this is all we get, so I don't know.
Something I realized autodidactically, to play on the words here, is that like the key, like everybody all the regions the Kievan Rus have touched and migrated towards all have these warding symbols. The same thing with the Sami drum. This is the Croatian symbols you just mentioned, the Icelandic wards symbols. Pretty much, it's a common theme within the Ausatru people that had all these very similar patterns.
Yeah, the sacred geometry is interesting because it's not just, like you think of the statues, Dionysian statues or these Roman statues to protect you. They have these statues of saints that you use to have lawn sales, right? Yard sales. You could have a saint that'll help you sell more. You have a saint you get to like put on your dashboard that keeps your engine safe. There's all kinds of saints. But there's this idea of patterns that are actually like hexes and charms. And the fact that that's acceptable in Catholicism has always scared the American Protestants.
Check this out, the Icelandic magical staves in relation to all this. It's in the private chat.
Is this an Orthodox
Christian? Yeah, this is the Megaloskivos
robe priest So just as you had showed,
I find
like,
this interesting that the Orthodox Christians
with
make
those tattoos at the beginning, Andreas, this is like her husband or like father, literally the father in the Orthodox temples, those cathedrals that still seem to have all that antiquitech and the gold, literally the physical
Orthodox
gold invested
amazing.
in those cathedral resonator domes, like that you can see them, that they're still like made of gold. So like
there's something also I want to say though about the Orthodox, because recently so many people have been, like, so you've got Owen Benjamin and Jim Bob having their duel on Instagram talking about the orthodoxy and Christ cuckoldry. The idea that people are obsessed with Christianity now who used to be secular, and how they flip-flop, but they really are kind of similarly infatuated and amazed by sexuality or by the restriction of sexuality, which is how control has been used by these religions. They say, who can get married, right? They've always said, if you want to be married, you have to do it in our church, or else you're actually committing adultery. Think about how much control they have over people's lives for centuries.
And for instance, like Catholics were, like, by law weren't allowed to marry Freemasons and vice versa, as well as like
where Jesuits and Freemasons and Orthodox were all working together with the Ottoman Empire. It seems to me you've got a bunch of control mechanisms here. The elite are all friends, and now you've got people saying, okay, well, we have to go to the Orthodox Church because the Protestants don't know anything, and the Catholic Church is probably skewed, but they're missing that the Orthodox Church is skewed as well. And the Orthodox Church is manipulating the temple. They're not using
ecumenical patriarchate, and its links to the CIA is very prominent ever since 1947 with President Truman. I can pull those links up if you want.
Oh, go on. Yeah, that sounds cool.
Please take over. I just wanted to point out this last aspect, that the woman that you showed at the very beginning, Andreas, Babushka, with those full tattoos, commitment, that like this is the father in the church with her, and that on the other side of society you have like the Russian mafia that has like the craziest gang tattoos in the world.
And the Yakuza tattoos
but like
Yakuza though have similarly insane tattoos. Gangsters around the world, religious gangsters,
they all do.
And they're not just tattoos; they're all magical. Everyone knows when they're getting these tattoos.
Before I forget, I want to mention that the robe patterns over here like have very Nordic motifs, relating to what I said earlier about like how all the regions the Kievan Rus touched. The remnants of these magical staves and these runes, whatnot, are all like, prominent everywhere. All these cultures that it intersected.
To be a girl, these are all magical staves. This is to induce fear. These are these are sigils for use on vetstones to dream of unfulfilled desires. Wow, pretty interesting.
Graphic.
But here's your links to the Archbishop to the proto-CIA. That's fun. Okay, so there's a lot of implications here, because we always tie the CIA to the Vatican, and this is interesting to me because look at this.
And if there was an elongated skull society of people, like easily
they would need hats.
Good place to hide.
Go check this link out. It's this link in particular ties in how the whole 1947 CIA manipulation of the ecumenical patriarchic election ties into the Ukrainian war today.
I find that interesting because I did an interview with Leo Zagami from InfoWars, who's Corsican and Italian, and talked about the Freemasons and how they've been the Italian Freemasons are not accepted by the world Freemasons. And he talks a lot about this guy, the Patriarch of Constantinople, and his connection to the Romanian Freemasons, as well as their the interaction with the occult. So what do you think is going on with the Patriarch of Constantinople? I mean, we call the Jesuits the Black Pope, but look at this guy. Come on.
I mean, but this website pretty much has the layman's of everything you need to know and how it ties to modern history today. If you just scroll down halfway through, it pretty much tells you how it links to the Ukrainian war.
Mid-15th century, 2 catastrophes occurred for the Patriarch of Constantinople. Fall of Constantinople, the Kievan Metropolia, And then, okay, so this is why the Ukraine was under Constantinople. Fanar showed essentially zero interest in its internal spiritual affairs, becoming involved only in the political, financial, convenient. Okay, so this is the conquering of the Ukrainian Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, under the Tartar peoples at that time, I believe.
Which is cool because if you watch that show,
Ottoman,
of the people, the Tartars are actually, the Tartarians are a major character in the Servant of the People show.
We're going through that again right now.
Yeah.
History's repeating, right?
Exactly, and that whatever created the ISIS terrorist group that bastardized the holy goddess of immortal Isis into this like sacrifice demonic terrorist entity that destroyed the civilization throughout the Middle East and like set war to the Holy Land. Sorry, forgot what I was saying. All down there, short-term memory loss.
Okay, you're going well.
Right.
Pretty much the organization behind ISIS is Mossad.
So what is your takeaway from this idea? What are they trying? Who's trying to do what?
Oh, Turkey and the Tartar people of Constantinople.
Oh yeah,
Constantinople wasn't constant. But so clearly the Russian Orthodox Church clearly went through the whole, revolutions and everything and the wiping out of the Tatars and all that kind of stuff.
The Western occupation part is where it describes how the Ukrainian. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
I was just saying, like, the church was obviously a constant that went through, right?
These are the
church was a constant that went through from the
Christian
the
Roman
Bolsheviks of the revolution, the destruction of Tartar. The church made it through. So clearly clearly, right? It's they wanted to be there. It's part of the system.
And that they have united what was the warring Sunni and Shia peoples of the Islamic Middle East and Arabia and stabilized the situation over the last years. And it first began with them settling their civil war in Chechnya at home when Russia first formed and broke away, to the point that now you can see like on I guess other media sites channels the videos of some of the war there, but that they've got Chechen soldiers like fighting for their cause on the front lines, like as some of the most dedicated units of their cause, and that they've got like the Iraq, Syria, Iran, and now Turkey, which is the home of the movement of the ethnic Tartar sect of Muslim people in that region that actually spans all the way up to the Uyghur region of Western China. That they're officially still like living societies and peoples, and it's Turkey and under Erdogan currently there, that Turkey is NATO's biggest army in all of NATO, and that now it seems that Turkey is aligned with the rest of the now settled Shia and now Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain all agreeing to do the oil in Chinese yuan as well as US dollar. It's pretty crazy that.
Man, that sounded a lot like a Noam Chomsky YouTube video.
Got up on my little political sit rep, Middle East
No, but like, it's all accurate information. Don't get me wrong. But fuck, I mean, the more we look at this, the more I kind of think to myself that we're in a situation where the entire world is about to make an ethnic or a religious nation choice. And so the Chechens are Muslim, but they're asked to be secular in a sense, or Russian in their own way. There's
100% secular, and that's what the
I like the QR code.
In Syria were before the war or the Arab Spring happened, and that the secular is the key aspect of them.
All of these places, like, so China's got this major collapse in population, and we've always said, hey, they built these ghost cities. They're probably not for Chinese people, and a lot of people laughed and said, "How is that possible? There's so many Chinese people." But look what's coming. I mean, pretty soon you could have these, and this is the other point. Your video is titled "Pyramid." A pyramid isn't a triangle, right? A pyramid it's a pyre, which is fire on the inside. So it has to do with an energy on the center of so it has to do with these energy power plants, Tartarian and Tictoc, but also the new ones, right? There's these new towers that produce electricity and energy. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing is this resurgence of new technology or old technology, whatever it is, but it's free energy technology that's going to be decided as this nation state. And it looks like, the religious groups are the ones who understand it the closest, whether they're Jesuit, Muslim, even it seems like Shintoists in Japan are pretty well connected to Nagamichi and Toshiba, right? So they're working with spiritual electricity as well. And I mean, it seems to me that the future is this QR code language.
Xirtus, is this the language of like Babel? Like, are we connecting to it? Is it AI connected? Maybe.
I mean, I think the idea of math is all it is. Computers understand math and right angles and 90-degree angles, and I think that's a big part of it. Is it's just so clean and easy to think in angles, right? Like if you had a language that was just made up of L's and O's, Gungwoo Korean is like the most aesthetic script, right?
Actually, so
minimalist aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. But like what I was gonna say was, so the Korean, the language, what we know as Hangul, is it wasn't implemented until the late 1800s, surprisingly. So most Koreans know from like their history, like lessons in school, that King Sejong made Korean, but it was pretty much dismissed after as soon as it was invented by the Confucianists as a violation of the treaty between the three nations of China, Korea, and Japan. So they adopted the Khitan language script as like a flow of communication between the three, because they recognized that they were all one people.
Also, Confucius way cooler than Confucianists. Just gonna say.
It wasn't until the Donghak Peasant Revolution when like the pretty much like the Taiping Revolution in China, when the Chinese pretty much from their own national identity, or try to. God, I forgot where I was going with this.
The language script, Hangul language, and
Hold on. I'm much better at. Come back to me. Actually, I'm much better at writing my thoughts down and just and speaking about this improv.
But it is a newer script, and the script is really interesting because you'll notice it has a lot of right angles, straight lines, and ones and zeros essentially that make up Korean. It's not the only thing going on with it, but it is pretty clear. One of the easiest languages, I think, to learn to read the script of because of this, because the symbols are so different from each other and similar enough as well. It depends on the person, but
there's another layer to this about the whole like ties into Cufic and whatnot, and the Arabic connection, how the Manchu script is a Semitic script and all that other stuff. But I'm currently rereading what I wrote down the general research tab of the Discord. God.
Yeah, and feel free also if you ever want to screen share to pull anything up. Totally cool. Yeah, looking through general research on the Tartaria Discord is definitely worth people's time. Go to tartarianova.com and click on when it loads. I promise you. Yeah, Discord entry right here on the top right here. You click on the Discord, and then you can join the community. And in the community, there's a lot of links to a lot of things going on. What's interesting after talking to David Ewing Jr. and Gungwoo and several people, actually, is the connections in the names of people in Japan and Korea to Arabic names, and the treaties between Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, that is, and Korea and Japan in the 19th century, which they were all about it. And the Turks were pushing the concept that Koreans, and that they were the same way the Germans wanted to make alliances, the Turks wanted to make alliances with the Asians, right? And so they said, hey, the Japanese are pretty cool, but the Koreans, there's something about them. They're just so much more Turkish than the rest of them. And it just seems such a crazy thing, pseudo-Turkology, to say that we're all Turkish. But
yeah,
what do you think of that?
Pan-Turco nationalism, which started with Ataturk, who was also a Freemason, which is what I was trying to eventually tie into, how like the Korean language was adopted after the Dongak Peasant Revolution.
They're all more pictographic symbols in language, correct?
Very so. But there's an entry within the Freemason magazine of 1865 where it talks about how there was a proto-Masonic lodges all across East Asia, which they've utilized, what the Western hegemony has utilized to create all these like political destabilization, revolutions. For their agenda and whatnot. But yeah, the Altai language theory,
Tartar people, right? Like that we see it.
Well, there's like, so the thing is, when talking to Dugan about Turanianism, this idea that the Rus or Turan are two separate empires that were in alliance at one point and then they broke apart. And this is Scythian, Tartarian, or there's a lot of ways to look at it, but it's not a nationalist thing in the sense of blood. It's not an ethnic nation. It's like Nation of MTV, Nation of Islam. Like it's a nation that is culturally aligned. And so they say, hey, here's a group of people that have similar cultural values to us, and we were able to trade with. And there might even have been some mingling of different trading families that have bred back and forth. That's fine. But it has nothing to do with what makes us similar. What makes us similar is our ability to, as free individuals, come together and trade. And that trade builds the idea of this nation, right?
And like,
and Ataturk is based all the way. When you think about Turks,
barbarians out of North Africa were essentially some of the sea people, as were the Vikings. It's always acknowledged that they were going up north and crossing over, and thus how it explains anything that is a Viking rune on any tablet or massive stone that is found anywhere in North America or South America. Well, the Vikings got there somehow through the north, that they were there somehow at some point. No, it's like they were one that was always over there trading, as were the barbarians, and probably, which explains like the Olmec and a lot of the
Mojener's Wrath is asking, he's saying it's AI or it's a QR code. I don't know if they aren't aware, but just to remind them, Kufic is the Arabic original script. So this is how Arabic was written thousands of years ago. And actually, Kufic might have been for the language that existed before Arabic, although you'll have to just guess. But this is, to this day, still a readable, legible kind of Arabic. You can look at this and read it.
So
this actually says Muhammad.
Could it essentially be like a quantum computer's original script or language or something?
So I'm a big fan of like the torn apart cultures idea. So my thought is Sanskrit probably has something to do with the original language, at least in terms of computation. This is the language that computers understood first, right? But at the end, we were speaking it and had a caste system for so long that they didn't have a written version of it. They literally just had people that were supposed to manage the toilets and others to fight off enemies in order that a class of priests could exist just to sing these words all day, which is like, in other words, how cool Sanskrit is. It is literally that beautiful of a language. But then thousands of years of other languages coming by with hieroglyphs and Phoenician, phonemes started to emerge. They started to study all these things. They said, okay, we'll get a written language going eventually. And it was a discerned movement when they finally created it. And there's two, at least, that you can think of: the Sanskrit alphabet, but also there's the Tibetan Sanskrit alphabet, which was created also.
Well,
and
so could there be like
later
7 original cultures or something? They say
well, so
maybe more.
what if you had one group that saved the script, another group that saved the language, another group that saved the computer, another group that saved the software? You know, someone saved the hardware, someone saved the software, and parts of their culture weren't able to be saved by everybody. Tower Babel,
right? Like these,
right? Yeah.
All the original pictographic symbol language, like written language. Like, yeah, man, it's gotta be. See, that's what people should be putting AI programs to, instead of like trying to abuse it and get it to like expose itself and depress itself and destroy itself and like be mean to it and make it hate everything. No wonder it like turns straight like crazy.
So they did figure out how to do this. I can't find the link right now, but Etruscan language, which is really interesting. If you look at the script for Etruscan, it is mirror backwards to Roman often. So it looks like someone took the letters that were common to be printed, and instead of stamping them to see the reverse, they just copied the actual printing press. And so we all are speaking a language that is basically backwards, and it's bastardized so many directions. But from the original Latin, it's Latin and Roman script is bastardized from Etruscan.
Yeah, I've also noticed that Latin is also an adaptation of the Indo-European languages, which is how we got Deus and Deus and Deus and whatnot.
Right, but that's also Devas, you know, so you can see Sanskrit, and in German and Latin both have roots to Sanskrit. So mein Namen is my name, and in Sanskrit, Mama Nama is equivalent to mein Namen. So most words you'll find connections to, except for in Finnish and in Turkish. It's a little harder to find connection to Sanskrit because Turkish does have its origin in Arabic, and maybe Arabic has its origins in some other language. And that's another question about Confucius and about caste systems in India. Were caste systems always the way? We seriously have several different kinds of humans, biologically, Neanderthals, Denisovan, Floriensis. Maybe caste systems were part of some sort of way that we all interacted with each other. It's just hard not to speculate.
But yeah, they fed this to golden age. They speak of the blue demigods. Like maybe those blue demigods still like exist above and rule the heavens and, you know, time immortal. But
they all these pictures of
the
Egyptian
Indian blue
giants
demigods
with little
are
dwarves.
reference to blue blood.
I mean, you have these magic dwarves that were giving wisdom to these giants, and then they would work together to run normal sized people. That's part of the old stories, right? They've got wizard dwarf, like you've seen Willow, but also just the idea that Etruscan, I was just trying to say, they fed it through RNN networks, and now they can read it, and so they're going to start going through a bunch of old Etruscan. But of course, so much of that stuff's been destroyed, so who knows what we're going to find. The next question is, if you do take the language understood from Etruscan and you start running old books from Italy from the 15th century, will we be able to turn them backwards and find these secret poems that were hidden by people who could speak Etruscan and had hidden their culture? And it seems like that's starting to emerge as well.
That's awesome. We got to get a little bit back to pyramids.
What do you think about the build? What do you think about the Tower of Babel being a pyramid, though? The idea that the fire on the inside, this is the idea. We're confused. It's not a triangle. So the pyramid is just an energy tower.
Not a tetrahedral pyramid. It would be a cyclical pyramid or a spiral pyramid.
I'm just saying a pyramid is any edifice with energy inside of it.
No, but it's one thing more. It's actually a spiral, the vortex geometry pyramid.
But like this is a pyramid, right? That's what I'm getting at. Like the Sears Tower in Chicago is a pyramid. There's energy in it. This is what that word really ends up meaning. It's a ziggurat. I can see that. It's more like a ziggurat, but it is. It's beyond a place of worship. It is literally a power station, right? It's broadcasting, transceiving. So we're surrounded in pyramids. We just don't call them that.
Like, I have a personal theory that the Tower of Babel was actually the Library of Alexandria.
That's a
an
spiral
interesting idea.
pyramid, essentially.
But because like so the Library of Alexandria is considered a mausoleum, right? And like the root word of mausoleum is the Musa. You know, the people accredit the whole idea that like it's the temple of the muses, which is where the word Musa comes from. But rather, if you look at it from the perspective that Musa is actually Moses, it becomes a temple of Moses. Really? And Moses was the person that led the 12 tribes of Israelites to out of Israel and eventually
out of Egypt.
Out of Egypt and whatnot. But like if you closely analyze the story, you'd realize the whole 12 tribes are actually the Scythian migrations, and that they're the Scythian steppe nomads that pretty much populated the entire world. And according to Exodus, they wanted the desert in circles for 40 years. But rather, if you analyze all the contextual lore of all these cultures within Asia, they touch on that they have their own 12 tribes lore, to the extent where it almost seems like that Moses crossed the entire Indo-Aryan steppe rather than wander in circles in the Levant.
So
eating Chinese food on Christmas, not a new thing. If you look up the Peking Jews, there's a bunch. There's both the Peking and the Kaifeng Jews. Jews in China, let's see, different. The Kaifeng Jews. What's the other group? I just saw it. Hold on, it was just there. I forgot it. There's another group here somewhere. Kaifeng Jews, most notably, but there's another group in Peking. Whatever, we'll get back to it. Here's a good start, though. There's a group of Jews that are the Kaifeng Jews, but they're supposed to have arrived when? Settlements, the origin of great debate. Some of them are trying to revive beliefs in their customs. They don't know. By the 19th century, the Jewishness had largely become extinct, though. So this had happened long before the 19th century, at very least.
Yeah, right. Long before. So
600 AD, maybe 900 AD.
Yeah, so man, it's 2 a.m. here, so my brain's kind of scattered, so I have the hard time trying to convey what I'm trying to convey my thoughts.
Oh, it's interesting though.
But yeah, like through all this flamenco tier research that I've done, I've realized that the original Israelites originate from the Yamnaya culture, and they're actually Scythians, and like the 12 tribes being the Scythian nomads, they follow the same exact migration pattern as what we think to be the Jewish diaspora. So yeah, like how I mentioned, how like instead of like how the Exodus story goes, how they wandered in circles in the Levant in 40 years, but rather it seems from contextual historical lore from all these regions in Asia, the evidence points towards the fact that they crossed the entire Indo-Aryan steppe into the Americas, reaching Alaska, which is corroborated by the Mormon lore and whatnot. And also, I have another thing. I mentioned this previously in a previous stream about this guy named Gallus Fletcher did a paper on this. On the 10 lost tribes. Then you mentioned the Tartars and like how it was a 16th century theory that was commonly accepted by Judeo-centrists of that era, that the Scythians were the actual original Israelites, which is what prompted the European expeditions to the Americas to look for these lost tribes of Israel, because they were under the impression that the Native Americans were paganized Israelites.
Where shout out to Old World Florida, Dr. Luongo's 5-hour mega stream, Greek to ancient American Cherokee cross continental video documentary, and if you haven't seen it, it was just an epic nonstop 5 hours of straight testimonial clips of all sorts of different Cherokee descendants, still native Cherokee that have done research into their own Scottish as well as Jewish as well as Greek, and the older back it went, it was more Greek heritage and actually genetics, and that the genomes even connected the Greeks to the Cherokee in one of the haplogroups or something.
Have you seen the Croatoan connection to the Welsh? And there's Welsh words even in Croatoan as well, and there's genetic links between the Welsh, and there's Welsh all along Argentina's east coast in Santa Cruz. Also, Sequoia. Gunwoo, you know about this, right? Sequoia was the Cherokee who wrote and created the 19th century script for the Cherokee language, which is based on Glagolitic and has a lot. I mean, it has some influences from the Roman script as well, but it's got a lot of
yeah.
You can also decode the Egyptian hieroglyphs with the Welsh language.
There he is. I knew if I said Welsh, I could get him back. It's always about the Welsh.
And you found that amazing map in the pyramids.
The Welsh are really interesting because their symbol of the red dragon sticks out. I know this is a Martin Leake moment, and we should bring him in just for this conversation. But the red dragon, I mean, I think about this idea of people saying, hey, the devil is that thing that is the red dragon, or the snake. But the Bible doesn't say that. There's just this other thing, these titans and demons and whatever. But titans specifically, the idea that something that sleeps for 1,000 years, like in that movie Reign of Fire, and then it wakes up again. I mean, I think that seemed so ridiculous at the time, but now it's like, wait, that's literally what happens. We're at a point where the Titans emerge and they've been subdued for a millennia, and they just emerge every millennia.
Speaking more on the Native Americans, there's a recent video that I found that oh yeah, Andreas, check your DMs on Facebook. It's like I sent you a screenshot of relevant information.
Oh, cool.
But so speaking more on the Native Americans, there was a Hopi Indian representative that was sent out to find the origins of his people, because the origins of Hopi Indians were such an enigma for the longest time. But they recently found parallels with Korean culture, and have eventually like coming to the conclusion that they are actually migrated Koreans. And I just sent the video on private chat about that. He words it much better than I can right now because it's 2 a.m.
I'm gonna find your links. Here they are. Hold on. Here. So there's this guy here. Politically throw out the political overthrow of the Tartars, generally the formation of mutually protective associations, and then Fletcher Tartar. Sorry, go ahead.
Have you guys looked into the Philippines, the slave trade from the Philippines in the 1500s, the USA?
No,
I'm all about this because the mock battle of Manila has been on my mind for months now. I just can't stop thinking about it. Do you know about the mock battle of Manila?
The mock battle?
So what happened was the Spanish started slaving. Campbell, what happened with the slave trade with the Spanish and the Portuguese? The Philippines. They just started taking people, picking them up off boats and everything. So the Spanish had a slave trade for a couple centuries before this. But at a certain point, the Filipinos started to win back. They were starting to succeed. So there was a secret.
Had the slave
so the Spanish were fighting the Filipinos.
And so they started to make deals with the Portuguese, and the Portuguese were taking over. And then the Portuguese were losing the battle by the 19th century. And so then they came to the United States, and they said, look, dudes, we're going to lose this war. And that's super embarrassing because these are brown people, and we have blue eyes. And we can't lose to them. But if you were to come in and take over, we could lose to you because you're Americans. So what we were proposing is this. We're going to have a mock battle. We're going to convince everybody that the Americans are there to help, to defeat us. And when you get in there, we're going to convince everyone out of the city, except for you and us. And then we're going to fill all the guns with blanks. And we're going to pretend to die as you shoot us. And we're going to have a mock battle. And indeed they did. And it took decades to prove this. And the Filipinos recognized it right away.
What? When was this documented false flag you're bringing up?
1898. The 1898 mock battle of Manila. Right. And so this is how the United States took over. And the question at the time was, what do we do? Because, you know, you got to think it's a little different. If this is a we the people, by the people, for the people country, then our dictatorship, usually when a dictatorship, like a king takes over, then he takes over, he owns these people. That's easy. But if Americans own it, do the American people own the Filipino people? And that was the question that was literally asked in Congress. And they said, yes, they do. But the way that the American people own the people is different. So it became a banana republic system where these were essentially owned by the state, and the state is manipulated by the representatives, but technically owned by the people. So this was the first point when, well, I guess not really the first point, but this is the expansion of the Manila policy that allowed for Americans to start owning countries and people.
Right. That's crazy, Xirtus.
Yeah, I love that story. It blows my mind every time I think about it.
Was that the fall of the Philippines because they just got all their money siphoned away by America?
The Philippines have been done dirty.
The Portuguese were doing slave trade there before. Have you seen the Woman King Warrior out yet?
Don't forget that also the CIA
Woman King.
Oh, the Woman King. Yeah. So I know that show exists. I didn't watch the show, but I know it exists. Right. The Woman King.
The movie, it's actually pretty epic. I watched it with Amber last night. It's like
the King's Woman, the Woman King. There it is.
The Woman King, and it's of an African empire. I think at the beginning of the 1800s, that was selling slaves to the Portuguese and the Spanish specific were the Europeans that were buying.
That's how I want to dress, like that guy.
So it's like just the connection that they always portray the Portuguese and the Spanish buying all the slaves around it. But anywho, it was...
Well, the Portuguese were part of the Sephardic slave trade, right? So Sephardic... Barbary slave trade, which is always a touchy subject.
So they say the
Barbary trade used to actually trade Portuguese.
Africans during the Tartarian time?
Well, we're just regions, you know what I mean? So we can't just say people because it's like people move all over the place, especially
I say all of them during that.
Well, you have if you're going to talk about races, you've got the Gaelic people, Portuguese. The Gaelics had Portuguese. The Portuguese had Gaelic people, and then they also had Illyrians along the coast, and then there were Berbers, and the Berbers were picking up people and selling them all along the south coast. And the Berbers were controlled by Sephardic traders who had been in charge of the Cordoba Caliphate. So a lot of people will say, "Oh man, Sephardic trading," and it's that's one thing to say because it's interesting that Larry David, slave master owner. Larry David found out that his grandfather or great-grandfather was a Confederate slave owner. Yeah, and this is very common. You'll find that there actually were a number of Jewish slave owners in the South, and the Barbary slave trade continued on afterwards. It is what it is. History changes. But what's interesting is that the Portuguese...
that African former Black Panther activist lady that found out her great-grandfather was also...
Yeah, I saw that. She came on the Mayflower, and she's from white people, man. She lost it.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool because you should have to pay reparations to yourself. I think that is the snake eating its own tail. So that's pretty cool.
I agree.
Berbers, though.
I think everyone needs to go to the automatic teller, take out money, walk into the bank and deposit it.
Yeah, I agree with Campbell. That's like the only solution. But this is how the Portuguese took over the work of the Barbers and the Sephardics.
Being slave owners and slaves, but it's a business.
Also, at the time, being a slave was a good thing because you had a retirement plan.
Africans were selling themselves to the slave owners.
Well, it was a different kind of slavery. Who's throwing money around?
But was it when did it switch from the Roman Empire that would have been in control? And
wait, Gunwoo just sent this. What is this, Gunwoo?
This is the Hopi Indian representative that found out the Hopi Indian origins actually come from Korea. The majority of the videos in English, so you guys can watch it on your own time if you wanted to, or just play it on stream.
Wow, that's really cool.
You don't
Well,
have
this
to
is
put
the
on
thing,
captions.
it's like-
Just turn on the sound.
On a Mac, it won't let me. Add
Indians
sound for
just-
some reason yet.
Really, Asians, right? Or Indians.
Yeah, they crossed like the whole the lore behind like the what we've been taught in school about like how the Indians immigrated from Asia through the Bering Strait and whatnot, but that ties into the whole Israelite migrations as well, which is insane.
Of the lost tribes, right?
Yeah,
what I was going to say
So that's
is,
like the survivors of the Atlantean time, and it was like essentially all of us the same root races and peoples in their regions, but you could literally find any of us living in any global city anywhere else in the world, because we were like how we are now, but maybe not in the same way.
Don't you think it's weird that the Israelites supposedly then enslaved themselves if they were the ones that were the Tartars?
Not really. That makes the most sense.
And...
Wouldn't you enslave your own people first? Isn't that like the most
Well, I mean, in a way, I guess.
Cataclysm, the time between that one time that it was all harmonic, like equal, good times, people after the cataclysm, far cataclysm, and then there must have been another more recent one that something hit us really hard, maybe 1,500 years, and then after that some group or power took control that has used to that treated us like slaves in the caste system before, and essentially still does from behind the I guess. Sorry, I'm gonna shut up.
But I was gonna also say the Filipino vampire thing. You know this one, right? This is one of my favorites. So after the Battle of Manila, the United States continues to own these people for decades until World War II, where they just used Filipinos as human body shields, and they use the islands for the South Pacific fleets and experimenting with nukes, and it just gets worse and worse. But then there's Filipino insurgents that are saying, dude, we really want to be free. And there's this guy named Edward Lansdale. And so Edward Lansdale is this coked out psychopathic disco werewolf of a CIA agent, Air Force kind of guy. And he says, what do people he's like, what do people fear? Yeah, when you put that much effort into having some mustache, you know what I mean? But what do people fear? And he's like, what do these people fear? These people fear vampires. I don't know if they did, but I mean, he thought vampires were scary, I guess. So he's like, what if I take somebody, make holes in their neck, drain them of their blood, hang them upside down, and put a bunch of speakers in the wood everywhere that just make screaming noises like, oh.
They did this in the Vietnam War as well.
Oh yeah, very successful. You know, if it works once, you do it again. They probably do this to us all the time.
The Air Force is behind so many psyops, dude. It's insane.
One time I was on a cliff in San Diego, and all of a sudden this horrifying noise like, oh, started playing, and I was horrified. And years later, I was talking to a guy in the Air Force, and he's just laughing. He's like, you know what that's for, right? That's to scare seagulls. And I'm like, wait, why would you do that? He's like, well, because the seagulls, they come over and they crap all over the place. I'm like, really?
Oh, you know what? I had a similar thing, right? A few years ago where I was out in the garden and I heard this scream and it sounded horrible. Like, it sounded like, I don't even know, like a monster killing a baby or something. And
it's okay.
Well, yeah, no, it turns out that it's actually when foxes have sex, they are really fucking loud. And yeah, turns out that's yeah.
Oh my god, I might have. No.
Yeah, that's something that you.
That's
no, trust me, you will know if you hear foxes mating because it sounds like an animal being murdered.
That's horrible, but awesome.
Yeah.
Now, what is a fox? Is it a canine or a feline?
No,
or is it a fox line?
A fox is a fox, as I think its own thing, just like a Wolverine.
It's in Canaan. It's in Canaanite. It's
it is a canine. You're right. Just like a wolf. You're right. I'm sorry.
It's canine,
definitely it's a canine.
There you go.
Yeah, you can actually have them as really cute pets. They're really cool.
Dude, I want a Reeves Muntjac.
Wait, not allowed to keep ugly ones?
Do you mind if I share
Check out this tiny little deer. You can have a Chihuahua-sized deer. You can carry like a portable deer. This thing is tiny, itty bitty.
I want it. I fucking want it.
I want it so bad. I've seen these billionaire Chinese people around Silicon Valley that have them in their purses, and I'm just like, why not me? That could be me.
You know what I want? I want a baby pterodactyl.
Pyramids.
I want to see a tiny deer.
This is pretty important. Like, this is a piece of information that a lot of people tend to miss within the Tartar community. Like, there's the screenshots I sent you on Facebook. The last one essentially.
Wait, let me. I'll get back to that.
The Gauss Fletcher, the Elders, the Tartars, or the 10 tribes, circa 1610. The second screenshot of that book, if you want to read that page specifically, talks about the how like the Thorogoods argued in the Jews in America, whatever.
So is this the correct page? This one?
Atlantis' catastrophe as well as Noah's flood only happened 5,000 to 1,000 years ago or something like that.
Here, I'll open this in see if I can open this in another tab if that makes it big. There we go. Okay, so there was occasional instances, of course, where the Judeo-centrists addressed the geographical question in considerable detail. In the mid-17th century, for example, John Dury and Edmund Hall gave a series of reasons for thinking that the Israelites became the Native Americans. And Nathaniel Holmes argued at some length that the lost tribes were living in the New World, but not as the Native Americans. But even in these three cases, the characteristics Judeo-centrist aversion to research is apparent. Dury, Hall, and Holmes lifted their evidence with proper acknowledgement from two persons who had points to make about the lost tribes and who could only make them the conventional way, with geographically specific evidence. One was the Presbyterian minister Thomas Thorogood, 1600 to 1669, who stood in the still sturdy amillennialist tradition in English Protestant eschatology. And the other was Menasseh ben Israel, the Amsterdam-born Jewish leader best known in English history for his largely unsuccessful attempts to secure the readmission of practicing Jews in England, from which they had been banished in 1290. Thorogood argued in Jews in America that Israelites became the Native Americans, Eus, and that they had reached the New World by traversing Tartary and then passing through the land of straits of Anian, which was located on many late medieval and early modern maps. Anian, in the general vicinity of the present-day Bering Strait. He based much of his case for the Native Americans' ancestry on what he thought was residual Mosaic beliefs and practices in their traditional culture. This method is discussed in part 4. An example is the practice of male circumcision. His primary purpose in making this argument was to promote the missionary work in New England. He was trying to show that the Native Americans were not the barbarous idolaters they appeared to be, but a once civilized and God-fearing people who could become once again if benefactors in England generously supported missionary activities in New England. Manasseh, for his part, wanted to establish that the Jews and the lost tribes had been scattered from one end of the earth to another. From his point of view, the prerequisite to their repatriation during the Messianic era, the readmission of Jews into England would place Jacob's descendants at one end of...
Right, so there was a second time, that time of the tribes of Israel was the last reset distribution of when it was common, like
to be like all over the world. These people,
this page alone is the entire premise thesis of the Tartarian theory that we're pretty much trying to discuss here.
Yeah, but then there's the 12,000 reset that's like modern science puts all of its like testing now, like it's pretty much documented. The Younger Dryas was like absolute catastrophe. It was before it would have been the megafauna. So anything giant that we find giant, it's acknowledged that that's when it lived. Giant bears, giant sloths, giant beavers, giant freaking humans probably, and that it was also the time of the big giant pyramids and the giant megalithic mound builders of people at that point. Probably those would be the demigods that were ruling the caste slave smaller people, or was there harmony? And also who knows?
I'm more and more convinced
that there was the link that I sent to the chat.
Oh yeah, for sure. Where is it at? Oh, I see.
Discord one, I think. Yeah, it should bring up a picture for you.
This one here, yeah, I pulled up earlier. Oh no, I didn't because I was looking at it and it wasn't screen sharing. My bad. All right, what is this?
Right, so it's quite interesting. I don't know if either of you guys can read French or German, but at the bottom it'll tell you that this is a coliseum, right, for naval battles for prisoners, right? As in like an actual coliseum, but they made them do naval battles.
Yeah, this is they've done. I've been to like a few coliseums that were set up for this actually, and they can fill them with water.
Yeah. So they get all for the people that don't know, they literally like a coliseum, but instead of having people fight bears and shit, they'd put them in boats and be like, "Fucking Royal Rumble, boys, let's go."
What I thought was interesting is that some people thought, "Oh, there's one."
That more looks like a full harbor.
But there's a coliseum in like every country I've been to. I've been pretty much anywhere I've ever been. You go to
it raises a question whether it was like a naval training center or something.
There's coliseums in Croatia. What?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's one in Croatia. There's one in Turkey. There's one in Spain. There's like every country I've been to. That was part of.
And in that book where that picture comes from, pretty much every city you see, which is like all Greece, Egypt, stuff like that. Pretty much every one of them, you see a coliseum somewhere.
So this corroborates the whole Phrygian migration theories.
And
the original builders of Rome were actually Phrygian.
Rome. So yeah, it's like it was just.
There we go.
Harmonic.
They were Smurfs.
People of that.
Smith.
I mean, it is interesting though because the
Phrygian the same as Frisian. Frisian, and then Frisia. What was the island called? Frisia.
If you look at almost any of these symbols, you'll find the Frisian. Right? The Frisian cap is associated with a level playing field, camaraderie, equal trading, and
speaking of that book, that reading of that book, it honestly was like sounded like the freest, like naval sea respectable, like people, and how you deal with hostilities, but how you deal with good people, and like the settlements and laws of like this island and this trading seafaring people. Hey, Campbell, like we gotta
traders got like a T tattooed on their forehead.
What is the crowns of Silla? What is the
tattoo your forehead?
What's the Gumwang mound? Gumwangshung?
It's like a royal burial mound in Korea. There's a bunch of mounds like these in all over Korea. But this pretty much like ties into the whole idea that like the Native Americans are actually Koreans.
Oh my God!
The prevalence of mounds in the Americas. But the crowns of Silla, the significance of that is the fact that it resembles the motifs of the crowns of Silla has no Asiatic motifs. Rather, it's all Scythian. There's that too, and like the whole ties into the what I've been saying about the Scythian migrations into the Asian region, and also the slab grave culture stuff that I found out is also like.
What's the deal with that? Going to slab graves. Why do people have these tombstones and
are rumored to have giants buried under them, or like literally macro-sized humans, which would have, 12,000 years ago, supposedly the time of Atlantis, a bigger technological society. We know that there was mega mammals everywhere, and then also dinosaurs and dragon stories back like
Native Americans created stone box graves in the Midwestern United States, the Mississippian culture, and they're just literally stone coffins. And it's interesting that this is supposed to be completely a separate cultural thing. What do you think is going on with stone? What were you trying to say earlier about stone graves going well?
Oh, so I was going to mention earlier that so all these Tartarian community research groups, like they keep pointing, like they're crediting all these Tartarian buildings, quote unquote, as it's the Phoenicians that were the seafaring group of people that like did all this stuff. But rarely I'm finding more evidence that it was the Phrygians that actually did all this. But in relation,
I agree.
Sorry?
So, like I said, I agree. Was that me? Someone said something. Like the Phoenicians, we're told, like, do you think they're the same as the sea? What are they called? The sea.
The sea peoples. They were called the sea
people. Like they're called
but
the sea.
also the Phoenicians, essentially.
But
right?
like, I mean, you got to remember flamenco here. I feel like the Phoenicians are offensive. Rather, we're misappropriating the Phoenicians with Phoenicians. Oh no, not Phoenicians. We're misappropriating Phoenicians with Phrygians.
Weren't they like around the same time as supposedly the Roman Empire that like existed all this time?
Phrygia, the cross-border cultural region in northern Europe stretching along the Wadden Sea, encompasses Netherlands, part of northern Germany, right? This is where the Frisians, right? The Frisians as opposed to the Frisians. It's very different, I'm sure. But they speak a slightly different language than the Dutch. They speak Frisian, right? So where are they at? They're all along places.
What's it called? There's an elf language. Did you know that? There's actually an elf language, and it's spoken by like I don't look. This is a small group of people. What's it called? Elf something.
Really?
Oh yeah. I need the name. Otherwise, all you get is Tolkien. No, that's not it.
Like J.R. Tolkien's elf-like language, but
no. This is an actual language.
Like a runic, petrographic sort of language.
It's called elfin something. Anyway, I'll find it at some point. Frisia. There used to be an island called. What was it called?
Frisia. Frisland. Frisland. It was below Iceland, closer to like the UK and Ireland and Scotland.
Island of Frisland, right? And so this is where the people supposedly went to Wales and they went to northwest Netherlands.
Yeah.
And it literally exists on all the all the Mercator and back maps. It's on there, and the Oralinda book, like the readings you've done so far, Campbell, anybody that's interested, read the Oralinda book, and it's literally the translations of like the laws and lives of the island of Frisland. And
so what's a slab grave? What does that mean?
Not really sure. So this was brought to my attention within my personal group chat
So all over Croatia, in my grandparents' mountain area, we have their graves going back like to the 14th century or the 9th century. It's hard to tell. But they all look like this, and they all have these little stencils that someone had scratched in of grain or tools, so that when they go to the afterlife, maybe they have grain or tools. I don't know, but that is you'll find these in these remote parts of the mountain, and instead of a cemetery.
But this ties into I'm glad you mentioned that, because this ties into the whole Hungarian-Korean connection. So the Slav grave culture is supposedly something that originated among the upper Manchurian area. But which this was brought to my attention by a friend of mine that actually does Tyrannic research. But then I found out the origin point of the Slav grave culture is the exact region of the Korean Buya kingdom.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? Okay, that's crazy.
Like, I don't know too much about
that one more time. This is essential piece of information.
So imagine this. This is Korea. This is North Korea. This is where Russia starts to meet with Korea. And this is where the Buyo Manchurians were. And so the Manchurians ran all of China until there was a flu. And the flu killed off 19 million people. I forget the number, but it was a lot of people. And after that, the Han took over. And so now the Han Chinese, people are like, oh, China, you mean the Han, where there's 300 ethnicities. There's 300.
Yeah, dude.
There's 300 different kinds of people that live in China. There's 51 languages left of it. And there's a lot of different kinds of people than Han. And the Manchurians were the ones who were in charge at that point. But they came from Buyo and were maybe Korean, maybe Russian, probably Tartarian, starting to sound like.
Well, it sounds more like they're what replaced the Tartarian sort of people.
They have Persian-looking stuff going on.
But just look at the map. That region of where the Buyo started, like the initial picture that you pulled up earlier.
How close is that to the?
And compare that to the Slav grave culture region.
So I also want to show you like what it looks like, the Buyo culture, because it's like, people talk about where does the culture in Asia come from, and some of this stuff. This is what I would refer to this as a pyramid. because the idea of energy inside of the edifice.
That's tetronic.
Pagodas, right?
And the pagoda, yes, and it's advanced pyramidism, where it's like your architecture is a fractal geometry of one of the essential base geometries.
Like pull up the Wikipedia page of the Slav grave culture. So it's going to show you a map of like where it all started and whatnot. And that's the exact region where Puya started.
So where is that in regards to the current Uyghur people? And
that's the same.
No, I guess that's more north.
Yeah, I mean,
but still, we're talking about nomadic people. So the idea that there were Turkish tribes that were trading across Mongolia, that there were multiple Silk Roads, and that they weren't all in the place that we're thinking they are. And
people that supposedly were the remnants of the Mongolian, Genghis Khan, the ruler that supposedly conquered Europe, but really it's like that's the story we were told.
Have you heard the Silk Road with silk ships, silk sails?
They're trying to explain the exchange of haplogroups between regions and why it happened, when in fact it's like, no, that was just a connected global trading people.
It's really confusing to scientists why people make love. It's not a normal thing for scientists to understand sex or love. So,
but it's like
someone must have traded people there, just forced them into a tent,
Well, it's just like how we are now, and like essentially isolation happening again globally, as opposed to us ultimately either devolving into South Park's like gray splat little humanoid gray clone things that wears made gerbs and they F themselves, or into like a higher race or destruction, I guess. The
Yamato people. I love that anime. Yamato, what is it? The anime about the Yamato, there's something there.
Well, the Chinese call these people Dong Yi, which is another effort by the Chinese to appropriate East Asia all for themselves for territorial claims. But like the Yamato people belongs to a haplogroup N, which is if you look at the haplogroup N distribution, it's the exact borders of Tartaria.
And it comes out of the Q, right? Which is the question it passes them. Okay. That's really interesting.
And this is how I uncovered the whole like Israelite migrations and stuff following the haplogroup N distribution.
Wow. The migration routes to the Japanese islands is very interesting when you think of the Ainu people, for instance. I mean, but yeah, so the idea that the Silk Roads were actually the silk sails, and so many of these places were connected by boat. I mean, this is something I saw earlier, HMS Challenger. So type any name of any rocket ship and put HMS before it, and you'll see that it's based on a Her Majesty's ship that existed before it.
What's another one? Empire, the monarchy. So it's like that was the caste system. That was the higher.
Here's the HMS Apollo. Rulers. What's the new one? What's the new rocket to the moon one? The female one.
Apollo.
No, the new one.
What? Oh shit! It's going to Mars after or whatever.
Space mission. What's it called, man? I forgot. Guys, what's the name of the goddess one? The other one. Someone in the comments is gonna say it. Oh, the space mission. It's happening right now.
Goddess.
It just landed. What is it? Moon space landing. What is the name of the Artemis? Artemis.
What does this have to?
Well, just if you start looking into these spaceships names, and that they're based on these older boats, and you see what the original boats were for, the kinds of intelligence and what gathering that they were used for, it gives you, because this is declassified, some of it. This gives you an idea of what they're actually trying to use some of these ships for, because they're in the tradition of what the older boats were made for. These are just boats, right? So it's pretty interesting when you find out that we're just like repeating that. And also that trade is about to become, right now they're trying to do the 15-minute thing. And that was talked about earlier on Think Tank, right? The 15 minutes from home. They want to have it so that you can get anything you want within 15 minutes of home. And East Palestine, Ohio is going to be the first 15-minute city. So the place that they had this horrible disaster is going to be where in the future you'll be able to get anything you want within 50 minutes, and you won't have to ever leave that city that just recently had this horrible disaster.
So it's just going to be everything's delivered by drone. You're in a quarantined disaster area.
Right. Do you remember the movie Judge Dredd or Dredd? Just in the comic series Dredd, everyone lives in these super cities and you can't leave your city and they get locked down, right? You're stuck in the city and that's it.
Engage the metaverse, become one with the AI and transhumanism.
What's the crown of Sela?
This was mentioning like how this corroborates the Scythian link to the Koreans and how like how these crowns and armors that the Scylla kingdom specifically had all have Scythian motifs and nothing about it is Asiatic.
Right. Yeah, it's super European, but Turkish. It's Turkish is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much Turkic or whatever.
Geometry and like just
wow, even Korean armor.
Oh yeah, hold on. The reason why I pull up the Korean armor link was if you scroll down, it shows like an armor set with a helmet, right? No, just pull out for a second. Just scroll down. No, pull out on the main page of the Wikipedia.
They make fun of wearing tinfoil hats, but in fact,
so the Scylla plate armor. That click on that one.
Steel would create a full electromagnetic Faraday cage.
And then pull up the link with the lamellar helmet.
Yeah, it totally does. I was about to say this.
Yeah. So this is the Pannonian Hungarian helmet, and it's fucking like present in East Asia. Like, are you kidding me?
Oh my god, yeah. And this is also what the Phrygian and the Austro-Hungarian and the tin hats, the tin
exactly.
Helmets. That's electrostatic generator. Look at that. As each band of that fabric that creates your electric charge, just like hair, fur. Anything
these are strips of metal that are all laid together.
Exactly, the exact opposite in that geometric amplifier fractal, like into your head, way into your aura or consciousness.
And it makes you look like you have a elongated skull and you have red hair sticking out the top of it.
Or your actual hair sticking out.
Why would you have red hair if you're Korean? You might, but I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, but then you have a red-haired giant, so essentially...
You have a red-haired horse, you know, so you can make it look like you have red hair.
Sorry, speaking of red-headed Asians, man, the Wu Sun
of Terry Carter channel, and it's the dying confessions of this lifetime cave explorer / treasure hunter / pyramid mound excavator legend in Utah and America, and where he talks about, and they show some of the most valid or verified images of giant skeletons in Americas from the mounds, and what this guy believes to be the case. And if you've ever heard of Burroughs Cave, he was a lifelong friend and active disclosure from Burroughs to this guy. And
if you control F, red hair.
And red hair is
right, the red-haired green-eyed giants, right? They're
not necessarily giants. I don't know about that, but if you just control F on that page and look up red hair,
demigods are like the elongated, essentially.
Green eyes and red hair. Green eyes and red hair. So the bad guys
breed with Homo sapiens, with Neanderthal, with us. That like this is still like the same genetic group that we came out of long time, where the actual giants that would be the actual demigods and buried under things.
What are you looking up?
I don't know, man. I typed in Korean, and you know what happens if you type in Korean? You get a lot of pop stars. The first thing that the internet knows about Korea. It's not my fault, but I mean, this is interesting that are these bad guys, ancient and semi-nomadic people? No, they're not even considered bad. They're just a group of people that live
These
there.
guys are part of the whole like Scythian alliance. They're one of the lesser-known Scythian tribes within the East Asian area.
They have the same looks as Attila the Hun. They've got red hair and green eyes. Same
green
looks
eyes,
as Muhammad.
yeah.
Green eyes like Muhammad. That's crazy. Okay. So what's up with this? What's up with the redhead internationalists? And it kind of gets into the idea of the 12 tribes, the Jewish tribes, because you've got redhead Jews, but you also have all different kinds of people all around the world. So is this maybe this doesn't have to do with ethnicity so much,
or is the 12 tribes of Israel actually referring to the current haplogroup of European Christian Muslim?
I'm thinking it's bigger. I'm starting to think it has to do with
survivors of Atlantis. Like, was Noahide flood a reset of people and global trade after? Well, clearly it was, I guess.
Well, I believe the haplogroup you're talking about is haplogroup N, which I was mentioning earlier. How like the distribution of haplogroup N literally forms the border of Tartaria, and on top of that, like I pulled another link in the private chat by Stephen Evan Collins on how the
what if these are the 12 tribes? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's
how the Israelite Israelites were actually Tartarian nomads.
You also said something about the red sun, and was that just because of the red hair, or
no? I said Wu Sun. That was a name.
But, Wu Sun, because I was thinking with the red sun and the black sun, and it's interesting because this idea that there's a special power in the red sun, and Superman. Obviously, you think of the Superman, the yellow and the red sun, and the powers of the sun. Do you think there's something to this like magic of the sun energy? And like, I mean, a lot of what we heard at the beginning of the Tartaria thing about EMF shielding was that this armor was not just for swords. It was to protect us against solar flares or volcanoes or
absolute psychic attack too. It's a complete Faraday cage around your entire body, including your head. Like they make fun of wear a tinfoil hat. But if you wear a tinfoil hat, a lot of people that are hypersensitive actually get relief, and just as high number of people suffering from such conditions as schizophrenia also get relief from the tinfoil hat, such as like Rex makes and stuff.
All I know is 7th century Korean aesthetic is so my look. Like this is how I want to dress all the time.
The royals were making that same
Thanks, Cam.
technology and coverage into those fields, but with an investment of gold and silver, the most precious, costly metals and materials, and doing it in this technology way that it's like
there's all super chat trophies for the next 24 hours will go towards giving me this outfit. Oh my god,
it's like psychic warrior technology.
Let's do a fundraiser.
God, Skeletor, you guys remember Skeletor in the Masters of the Universe?
Jay Dreamer says like a lot of this stuff is from reset events, plasma events, or whatever they are.
This is the outfit I want the most.
So they to do with
never wear anything else.
Dude,
ultimate Skeletor
you
power.
Look right at home at a Rothschild ball with that, man.
See, but it's got some Indonesian Filipino vibe. It reminds me of the Filipino helmets, if you remember, like the Filipino crowns.
Or are they not demons? They're just demigods.
Bali do it as well.
Have you seen like the Thai crowns are really insane?
Yeah,
they really follow the same idea.
They're
covered in jewels, which are crystals, which are resonators inside these gold freaking.
There's no way that's not magic and technology.
Ray antenna. Like,
so was that a control device to control the king?
Exactly.
Was the king getting his command somewhere else?
On your crown chakra, the crown on the crown. Look at that freaking, and the weight of gold and gems, like that value that they're putting into turning into that fractal array antenna geometry. Like, how could it not? How is that not connecting to your halo of your consciousness and literally giving you a golden jewel antenna?
Who are they talking to?
Your aura.
Who are they
connected
connected
to
to,
the
right?
spirit realm, the
Israel,
higher
essentially.
consciousness, like all of us. Who knows?
Gunwu just posted this. This is
That's
juicy.
why they were rulers.
The 10 tribes of Israel essentially vanished from their former kingdoms, Israel, circa 721 BC. They've been a powerful kingdom in the Eastern Mediterranean region for centuries prior to that time. They'd been allied to the city-state of Tyre, Sidon, etc. Tyre, I always like to consider as Tartaria, but that is a Phoenician city along the coast near Tripoli. In what historians now call the Phoenician Empire. Excuse me. Their alliance dominated the ancient world's maritime trade routes, and from the time of King David onward became a powerful military power on land as well. They were exceedingly blessed by God. Nice. During the times of King David and Solomon, but a long succession of sinful kings led to a steady decline in their strength and influence of the kingdom of Israel. Imagine if history books were taught
Solomon
this
was
way.
the time of the Scythians.
I know, right?
Where they're like, George Bush was a great president, but a lot of sinning led to the decline of the American empire. During an approximately 20-year span between 740 to 720 BC, the 10 tribes of Israel went into foreign exile into several waves. At the beginning of this period, the Assyrians took captive the tribe of Naphtali and the Gileadites, tribe of Gad and Reuben, and half of the tribe of Manasseh. By 721 BC, all of the 10 tribes of Israel who had formed in the northern kingdom of Israel had been removed from their lands. While their house of Judah remained in the promised land for a time, many have puzzled over the fate and future of the 10 tribes of Israel. Where did they go? While the Bible foretold the tribes of Israel would scatter literally to all four directions, the remainder of the article is devoted to connecting many of the exiled tribes of Israel to one of the largely ignored confederations of tribes, which emerged afterwards in the region of South Russia, the Scythians. I mean, there's a lot of evidence for this, actually. I like this.
So they're hiding and trying to like make the least relevance out of the most important connecting facts of this global Tartarian, just human civilization that everybody was traveling and living like we are now, essentially.
Did you ever read The Secrets of Nim? Not the movie. The movie's amazing, but you got to read the book, because the book, it's about the National Institute of Mental Health, and you get really deep into like the idea of creating these genetically modified mice, which are basically transhumanists. And this is the idea of Atlantis, of creating us, where we're able to finally think for ourselves. So the rats are thinking, okay, we need to destroy everything we have that belongs to the humans so that we build a completely new society that's erased of everything that came before it, so that we don't become doomed to repeat it. Sound familiar? This is the story of Moses and Osarseph, right? Because Moses is according to the Bible, he's basically the Pharaoh's brother. He's raised to become Pharaoh, and then he ends up in charge of this other religion. But that means he spent his whole life not speaking Jewish, not speaking Hebrew. No, he's raised by the Egyptian royals. He can only speak Egyptian. Yeah. He doesn't speak Hebrew. Yeah. That's an important fact about Moses.
He took the ark out of Egypt, and
he took the people out of Egypt, put them in the desert for 40 years, so they forgot who they were in their culture.
The technology that powered the pyramids. Like
by the time they got back,
they didn't remember the covenant.
Yes.
They couldn't, but they also erased their culture by taking them for 40 years in the desert. They forgot who they were. By the time they got back, they had no idea where they were.
That's like in exile, like a civil war, like what happened to Gaddafi, or like.
But it's also what happened in The Secrets of Nim, because the mice, they're thinking, okay, well, if we were to start our culture over, we need to erase everything before it. So forget all the other gods. We have but one God. You know, this whole thing of Osarseph creating the monotheism to replace Autonism, right? Autonism is Akhenaten. He's got his whole religion of there is like one God, but it's not.
Was there this time of demigods existing like essentially with humans, where it's like we were either their like slave caste system, or like we were earning our own freedom out of it or something like that, like, and then they're just
all the stories say that people brought technology in, right, and they're always to different people, and then they seem to disappear. Maybe they just left people in charge, and they were just spoiled rich kids, right, who just turn into assholes. I mean, look what we see today. You see rich kids, right? They're, put them in charge of anything, and they just become psychopaths.
Well, you got to get back to those elongated skulled folk that are depicted as the kings and queens and documented everywhere. And no, Lukey's still there.
We lost.
We lost Andreas.
We lost Andreas. So that's fair. Let me know if you want me to end it on your channel, Xirtus. But that the few tests that have come back genetically.
That was just rude.
I think his computer might have died. But sorry, not computer, his phone. I'm retarded. The connection. Anywho, point being, genetic testing on elongated skulls that are original genetics of them, they come back 50% like Homo sapien human, and then they come back like 50% unknown, and that supposedly these pyramids that are sacred and owned by the government, or you just don't dig under them unless when they find them, they're giants. So there was a reset of giant people on Earth, and then there was a time of our people being all over Earth, like our own civilizations.
And there's big resets and there's small resets. There's worldwide resets like the floods and stuff. But then there's other resets that are small and localized where it's not everyone getting reset, but they can be either natural or man-made, So that's the thing. Not all resets are these worldwide things where everything gets destroyed. It could literally be a culture getting changed, and they change the language.
It's all orchestrated.
Businesses. Yeah.
But the point I was trying to make earlier, the reason why I pulled out the whole gave Andreas a link to the Freemason magazine was because that page specifically states that it was the Masonic objective to politically